That water belongs to this community, and you are going to hand me the keys to the gate by Friday, or I will have you billed for every gallon." That was Gail Thornquist, standing on my gravel in white sandals that were already losing the fight with the dust, holding a clipboard against her chest like it was bulletproof. She was the president of the Homeowners Association down the hill. And she had decided, somewhere in a meeting I was never invited to, that the pool I built with my own 2 hands on my own deeded land was hers to give away. My name is Russ Keller. I am 61 years old. I spent 34 years building, certifying, and repairing public aquatic systems for a county parks department. And when I retired, I built one small pool on the 4-acre shelf of land my wife and I bought before that subdivision was a survey stake in a field. Gail did not know any of that yet. What she did not know, the thing that would eventually have her standing in my driveway with her voice cracking, asking me to please take it back, was that I was the only person within 40 miles legally allowed to operate the thing she was trying to steal. So let me ask you something, and be honest. If someone fined you for using the pool you paid for, on the land your name is on, what would you have done? Most folks would have shouted. I want you to watch what a binder does instead. I have to back up because the pool was never really about a pool. It was about the lots. When Carol and I bought our place, the hillside below us was a sheep pasture that flooded every spring. We bought 4 acres on the dry shelf above it, partly for the view of the lake, and partly because the old man who sold it to us, a rancher named Brennan, told us the low ground would never purse and nobody would ever build there. He was wrong about that, the way careful men sometimes are about other people's greed. 15 years after we moved in, a developer trucked in fill, raised the pasture 8 feet, and dropped 71 houses into the mud. They called it Lakeshore Vista. From my porch, I could not see the lake anymore. I could see roofs. Carol passed 4 years ago. Pneumonia, fast, in a February that I still cannot drive through without my chest going tight. She was a swimmer her whole life. The kind who did her laps at the county pool at 6 in the morning when the water was glass and the lifeguard was still yawning, and I was the man who maintained that pool, which is how we met. She used to say the pool was the only place she could hear herself think. After she was gone, I would catch myself listening for the sound she made coming up the back steps with wet hair, and not hearing it, and having to put down whatever was in my hands. After that it was me and our daughter Nora, who was 14 then and is 18 now, and reads 3 books a week and corrects my grammar at dinner. She has Carol's stubborn chin and Carol's habit of going quiet right before she wins an argument. The pool was for her. It was for Carol too, but mostly it was for the girl who had stopped swimming the year her mother got sick and needed somewhere to start again. Carol had wanted a real pool for years, not a vinyl ring in the yard that goes green by July. And I kept saying next summer the way men do, until there were no more next summers with Carol in them. So, the spring after she died, I dug it myself. I rented the excavator, I tied the steel, I set the forms, and I shot the gunite with a crew I had worked beside for 20 years, 3 old hands who came out on a Saturday and would not take my money, and drank my coffee and told Carol stories until dark. I want to be exact about this, because exactness is the whole story. I did not buy a backyard kit. I poured a 40-foot gunite lap pool with a proper surge tank, a sand filter, a chemical controller, and a recirculation pump rated for commercial load, because that is the only kind of pool I know how to build. I pulled a permit from the county for it. I had it inspected. I am a certified pool operator, the actual license, the one a public pool has to have a person hold or it cannot legally open its gate. I keep my certification current out of habit, the way some men keep a hunting license they will never use. I built that pool to a public standard on private land because I do not know how to build anything halfway, and because some part of me was building Carol the thing I had promised her. And you do not give a promise the cheap version. Here's the part that matters. My pool sits 200 feet from the back corner of Lakeshore Vista, just over my property line, on the high shelf. The developer, before he sold out and left, had promised those 71 buyers a community pool. He never built it. He took their amenity deposits and drove away. So those families moved in expecting a pool, paid an extra assessment for years toward a pool, and looked up the hill at mine, full and blue and clean, and somebody on that board did the math. The first letter came on a Tuesday. I remember because Nora had a debate tournament, and I was ironing a shirt I never iron when the mail came. It was from the Lakeshore Vista Homeowners Association, and it informed me that my pool constituted an unpermitted shared amenity, in violation of community standards, and that I was hereby fined $200 for operating a commercial aquatic facility without association approval. I read it twice. Then I laughed, which I am not proud of, and I filed it. Filing is what I do instead of shouting. I have a gray steel box, fireproof, that holds the deed to my 4 acres, the recorded plat, the county pool permit, my operator's license, and the survey I commissioned the week the bulldozers arrived next door. I put the letter in a folder marked with the date, and I went back to ironing. The second letter came 11 days later. $500. The pool was now described as an attractive nuisance drawing association members onto unsafe private property, which was rich because the only way an association member got onto my property was by climbing a fence I had built precisely to keep them off it. I drove down the hill to the clubhouse to settle it like a neighbor. That was my mistake if I made one. You cannot settle anything with a person who has already decided you are the obstacle. Gail Thornquist met me in the clubhouse lobby under a banner that said Lakeshore Vista, where community comes first. She was maybe 54, sharp as a folded map, in a blazer, the color of a road flare. She had a way of looking at my boots when she talked. Like the dirt on them was the argument. I told her plainly that the pool was on my land, that I had the deed and the permit, and that the fines had no standing because I was not a member of her association and never had been. She smiled the way you smile at a child who has gotten the arithmetic wrong. "Mr. Keller," she said, "that pool is the only aquatic amenity serving this community. That makes it functionally part of our common area, whether the paperwork has caught up or not. The board has voted. We are exploring dedication of the amenity. You can be cooperative or you can be expensive." I asked her what dedication meant. "It means," she said, "that the pool becomes ours because it should have been ours all along." I drove home. I did not slam the truck door, though I wanted to. Biscuit, my daughter's brown mutt with one ear that stands and one that flops, met me at the gate the way she always does, and I sat on the tailgate and scratched her chest, and thought about how a person says we are exploring dedication of a thing that belongs to someone else and believes it. Then I opened the gray box and started a new binder. Now, you have to understand what Gail did next, because if she had simply kept mailing me fines, this would be a short and boring story. She did not do that. Gail was not lazy. Gail was thorough, in the way that frightens you once you see where it is pointed. A man named Drew Halloran started showing up at the clubhouse. Lean, clean-shaven, the kind of fellow who wears a quarter zip and loafers to a work site and never gets either one dirty. He ran an amenity management company, the sort that contracts to operate pools and gyms for associations, and Gail had hired him. I knew this because Sal Brennan told me. Sal is the grandson of the rancher who sold me my land, and he lives 2 doors into the subdivision in one of the original lots, and he hates the board with the patient hatred of a man who has read every set of minutes for 6 years. Sal spent his career as a county environmental health inspector, the man who walks into restaurants and pools with a thermometer and a test kit and shuts them down. He is 70 now. Tall and stooped, wire glasses, a green canvas coat he has worn since the first bush. When his grandfather sold us the shelf, the old man walked the line with me himself, stopped at every iron pin the surveyor had set, and put his boot on each one and said, "That is yours, and that, until we came back around to the gate." Sal was a teenager then, sulking in the truck. He remembers the walk. That is the kind of neighbor he is. He keeps a copy of his grandfather's hand-drawn pasture map in a kitchen drawer, and he will show it to you whether you ask or not. Sal called me on a Thursday and told me to come look at something. I could hear in his voice that it was bad, because Sal does not waste words on a phone, and he had used 4 of them. "Come look at this," before he hung up. What he showed me was a notice posted on the clubhouse board. The association had adopted by board resolution an amenity dedication and transfer, and the notice declared that the Lakeshore Vista Community Pool, located on the upper parcel, was as of that date a common area amenity of the association, to be operated under contract by Halloran's company starting the 1st of the month. They had drawn a little map. On the map, my pool was inside the association boundary. It is not. It has never been. There it sat anyway, in a thick black line somebody had drawn around my land. They forged a dedication, Sal said. You cannot dedicate land you do not own. They recorded a resolution. Like it is gospel, anyway. And most folks will not read past the seal. I asked him why they would do something so easy to disprove. Sal took his glasses off and cleaned them on his coat, which is what he does before he says the thing you do not want to hear. Because they are not planning to ask you, Russ. They are planning to take it and dare you to spend 3 years in court getting it back. Possession is 9 points of the thing, and Gail knows it. By the time a judge sorts it out, they will have run that pool for 2 summers and called it theirs. And you will look like the man who took the kids' pool away. That was the moment I stopped thinking of this as a misunderstanding. Here is what I did, and I want you to notice that I did not do anything loud. I went down to the county recorder's office on a Monday morning, the kind of building that smells like toner and old paper, and I waited my turn behind a man buying a foreclosure and a woman researching her grandmother's house. The clerk behind the counter was a heavy-set, kind-faced woman named Dot, who has worked that window longer than I have owned my land, and when I told her what I needed, she did not blink, because nothing surprises a recorder's clerk. I pulled certified copies of 3 things. My deed, my recorded survey, stamped by a licensed surveyor, showing my fence line, and the pool sitting 191 feet inside my own corner, and the original Lakeshore Vista plat, the developer's own filed map, which showed the association's common area ending at the bottom of my shelf, a full 200 feet downhill of the pool. Dot ran the plat under the big light and tapped the boundary with a fingernail. "That is a clean line," she said. Whoever drew this knew what they were doing. She did not know what I was fighting. She just knew a good survey when she saw one. The developer's own paperwork said the pool was not theirs, in his own filed lines, on a map he had paid to record. I had all 3 certified with the raised seal pressed into the corner, 3 copies of each, and I paid the per-page fee in cash and carried them to my truck flat in a folder so they would not crease. Then I did the thing Gail never once thought to do. I checked her work. I requested in writing, as is my right under the open records portions of the association's own bylaws, the documents behind their dedication. It took them 16 days and a second letter from me to produce them, which told me something by itself. When the packet finally came, it was thin. There was a board resolution. There was Halloran's management contract. There was a certificate of insurance the association had bought to cover the pool as a common amenity. There was no title work, no deed, no survey, no easement, nothing that gave them the ground the water sat on. They had insured a thing they did not own and hired a man to run a thing they could not legally touch. And there was one more thing missing, the thing that turned the whole fight, and I sat at my kitchen table a long time before I understood I was looking at a hole instead of a page. Their packet had no certified pool operator on file. Halloran's contract listed maintenance staff. It listed a cleaning schedule. It did not list a single licensed operator, because Halloran did not have one on his payroll within driving distance, and a public pool cannot legally open its gate without one. I had built a commercial-grade pool. The minute they declared it a community amenity serving 71 homes, they turned my private pool into a public one in the eyes of the state. And a public pool, by health code, must have a certified operator of record, daily chemistry logs, a posted permit, and an annual inspection. They had none of it. They had taken the one thing in this whole county that legally required me to make it work, and they had announced they were going to run it without me. I closed the binder. Outside, Nora was floating on her back in the deep end, with her hair fanned out, the way Carol used to, and I stood at the window and watched her, and did not call her in. The light was gold on the water. I let her have the pool a while longer, because I knew what was coming, and I knew the water was about to stop being simple. The first of the month came on a Saturday. I woke to the sound of a chain. It is a particular sound, a chain being threaded through a gate, a dry metal slither, and then the clack of a lock. And I have heard it 10,000 times in 34 years of opening pools at dawn, so I knew exactly what it was before I was all the way awake. The difference was that this time it was my gate, and the hand on the chain was not mine. I lay there a second listening to it, the way you listen to a sound that does not belong in your own house. And then I got up. Halloran's crew had driven up my gravel before light, and they had put their own padlock on my gate, a shiny brass thing still wearing the sticker from the hardware store. Two men in matching navy polos were unspooling a hose toward my equipment shed when I came down the porch steps in my boots with my coffee. Biscuit at my heel with her hackles half up and a low sound in her chest. The grass was still gray with dew, and their boots had cut dark tracks across it. One of the men looked up at me, and then looked quickly away. The way a man looks away when he knows, somewhere under the polo, that he is on the wrong side of a fence. Gail's white SUV was parked across my drive at an angle that said she had practiced parking it that way. She got out with the clipboard. "The amenity opens to members today," she said. "We would appreciate it if you would stay off the premises, Mr. Keller. It is no longer your concern." I looked at the men at my shed. I looked at the padlock, which was hanging on a hasp I had welded, and I will be honest, my jaw set so hard I felt it in my ears. There is a kind of anger that is just heat, and there is a kind that goes cold and starts making a list. I made the list. I did not raise my voice. I asked Gail one question. "Who is your operator of record?" She blinked. "Our what?" "Your certified pool operator, the licensed one." The state requires a public pool to have one on file before it opens. with a posted permit and a chemistry log. "Who is yours?" She recovered fast. "I will give her that. Mr. Halloran's company handles all of that. It is fully managed and fully insured." "All right," I said, and I drank my coffee, and I went back inside. That is the part people do not believe when I tell it. I went back inside because I had stopped trying to win an argument with Gail in my driveway. Months before, I do not win in driveways. I win at the county. That morning I made 2 phone calls. The first was to Sal, who did not even let me finish. "I already know," he said. "I called it in Thursday. I still have friends in that office, Russ. They are sending somebody." The second call I made was to the County Environmental Health Division myself, as the property owner, and I reported that an unlicensed entity was operating a public aquatic facility without a certified operator, without a current permit, and without chemistry logs. I gave my permit number. I gave my license number. I gave the recorded survey on file. The woman on the line was quiet for a second and then said, in the flat way of people who have seen a lot, "We will have an inspector out today." You want to know what happened next? I will tell you, but I need you to understand the shape of it first, because it did not happen in a courtroom and there was no speech. It happened in a parking lot on a hot Saturday, and the only weapon anybody drew was a thermometer. The health inspector arrived at 2 in the afternoon. By then, Halloran's crew had been running my pool for 6 hours, and a dozen Lakeshore Vista families were up at my fence in swimsuits, towels over their shoulders, kids hopping foot to foot, because Gail had blasted out an email that the community pool was finally open and the gate fee was waived. They were not bad people. They were families who had been promised a pool for years by a developer who robbed them, and they had finally been told it was theirs. I did not blame a single one of them. I blamed the woman who had told them a lie with the seal on it. The inspector was a younger man named Pratt, with a county truck and a black case and a clipboard of his own. The difference being that his clipboard meant something. Sal met him at the gate, and the two of them shook hands like men who had stood over a lot of failed grease traps together, which it turned out they had. I came down the hill. Gail came marching over with Halloran a step behind her, both of them smiling like the inspection was a ribbon cutting they had arranged. Gail already talking, telling Pratt how pleased the community was to finally have its amenity, how long the families had waited. Pratt did not smile back. He has the particular flatness of a man who has been lied to in driveways his whole career and has stopped letting it touch his face. He walked the deck slow, looking at the coping, the depth markers, the drain covers, the way a man reads a page. He crouched at the skimmer and looked at the flow. He opened the equipment shed, which I unlocked for him with my own key, and he stood a while in front of the controller and the chemistry logs, which were mine, in my handwriting, current to that very morning, because I had never once stopped keeping them even after the chain went on the gate. He flipped back through 3 years of those logs without a word, and I watched his eyebrows go up a 1/4 inch, which from Pratt is a standing ovation. Then he straightened up and asked Halloran, not me, for the association's operator certificate and the current operating permit for the facility. Halloran started talking. Quarter-zip men can always talk. He said the company was fully bonded, that an operator certification was in process, that they had every intention of full compliance within the standard grace window. "There is no grace window for a public pool with bathers in it," he said. "You have got 40 children and adults in the water of a facility with no permit, no posted operator, and no chemistry on file under your name. I am closing it now." He red-tagged the gate. He stuck an order on the chain link, and he stood there while Halloran's crew cleared the water and the families gathered their towels and their disappointed kids and walked back down the hill. And the whole time, Gail Thornquist's face went from road flare confidence to a color I do not have a name for. She was not done, though. I told you she was thorough. This is where she made her stand, and this is where it mattered that I had walked my line and pulled my copies, because a woman like Gail does not fold the moment the wind turns. She had built her whole life on never being the one who was wrong. Gail did not back off. Gail counterattacked, hoot and pie, and counterattacked. She told Pratt loudly, in front of everyone still in earshot, that the facility absolutely had an operator, that the operator was on file, and that the operator was the property's own builder, who was certified and who had a duty to the community to keep the pool open. She pointed up the hill. At me. It was clever. I have to hand it to her. She knew, because somewhere in those 16 days of records, she had finally read my permit, that I was a certified operator, so she tried to conscript me. She tried to make my own license the thing that forced the gate open, and make me the villain if I refused. She turned to the families and said in a voice pitched to Carrie, "Mr. Keller can open this pool for your children with one signature, and he is choosing not to." For a second, the families looked at me, and I felt the whole weight of it. The kids, the towels, Carol's voice in my head saying, "Do not let them make you the bad man in your own yard." I did not give a speech. I have watched men lose by giving speeches. I asked Pratt one question, so the answer came from him and not from me. "Inspector," I said, "can a certified operator be compelled to put his license on a facility he does not control, does not own, and did not contract to run?" "No," Pratt said. "An operator's certificate is personal. He puts his name on a pool. He is personally liable for every bather in it. Criminally liable if someone goes under a permit in his name. Nobody can force that onto him. Not a board. Not a contract. Not a vote. That is his signature. Or it is nobody's." Then Sal stepped up quiet and said the thing I would not say about myself. "And the only certified operator in this county who could legally sign that pool open," Sal said, "is the man whose land it sits on, whose deed I have read, whose survey is filed downtown, and whom this association just chained out of his own gate and fined for using his own pool. You want him to volunteer his license to the people who did that. You could hear the lake from up there. Nobody said anything for a while." Gail tried once more, and her voice did the thing voices do when the floor is going. "The dedication is recorded," she said. "The board voted. This is association property." Pratt asked to see the title. Gail said the resolution was the title. Pratt, who deals with property lines every working day, said a resolution is not a deed, and asked again for anything showing the association owned the ground. Halloran had gone very still beside her. Drew Halloran, it turned out, was the kind of man who is brave until the word liability is spoken by someone with a badge, and then he is a man who remembers a phone call he has to make. I had the certified deed, the survey, and the developer's own plat in a folder under my arm. I had brought it down for exactly this. I handed all three to Pratt. He read the survey first, the way a professional does, then the deed, then the plat, and he looked up the hill at the pool, and then at the black line on Gail's little map, and he said to her not unkindly, "Ma'am, your own developer's recorded plat ends 200 feet downhill of this water. This is not your amenity. It never was. You have been operating a public pool on this man's private property without a permit, an operator, or a deed. I would stop talking and call your insurer." That was when Halloran left. He did not say goodbye to Gail. He walked to his truck and his company's contract walked off with him. And the next week, his certificate of service was withdrawn in a one-line email. Sal forwarded me with no comment but a single period. I would like to tell you, Gail learned something that afternoon. She did not that day. That day, she got in her white SUV and reversed off my drive too fast and clipped my mailbox, which I did not fix for a month because it pleased me, and I am not proud of that either. What broke her was not the inspector. It was the math, and the math took 11 days to arrive. When a public pool is red tagged for operating without a permit and an operator, the citations do not go to the water, they go to the entity that opened the gate. The association had advertised the pool, charged toward it in assessments for years, and run it for one Saturday with 40 bathers in it, and no operator of record. The county issued the association a notice of violation. Their insurer, the one who had written a policy on a pool, the association did not own, voided the policy the instant they learned there was no deed and no operator, and sent a reservation of rights letter that Sal said was the politest way an insurance company has ever told somebody they are on their own. And a lawyer for 2 of the families, the ones whose kids had been in unpermitted water, sent the board a letter of their own. 71 homeowners who had been told the pool was theirs learned in a single special meeting that their board president had recorded a false dedication, run an unlicensed public pool, exposed every one of them to personal liability through their association dues, and lost their insurance doing it. Sal was at that meeting. He sat in the back row in his green coat and did not say a word the whole time, which for Sal is its own kind of testimony. He said it lasted 4 hours. He said the clubhouse air conditioner could not keep up with 70 angry people in folding chairs, and that the banner about community had started to peel at one corner over the podium, and nobody fixed it. He said Gail stood up there with her clipboard, the same clipboard, and tried to blame Halloran, who was a professional, she said, who had assured the board everything was handled, and Halloran was not there to blame back, because Halloran had already mailed his resignation and changed his voicemail. Then she tried to blame the developer who had robbed them years ago, which was true but did not help her, because the developer was gone and she was the one at the podium. Then, Sal said, she made the mistake that finished her. She tried to blame me. She said the whole thing could be resolved in an afternoon if their neighbor up the hill were not so selfish with his pool. The room had been with her. Barely up to that point. The word selfish turned it. A woman in the 3rd row, a young mother named Alvarez, whose 2 kids had been in that unpermitted water on opening day, stood up with a baby on her hip and asked Gail one question that ended it. Whose pool is it, Gail? Gail did not answer, because the only true answer was a name that was not hers. She showed up at my gate on a Sunday evening, 9 days after the meeting. Alone, no clipboard, no blazer, just a cardigan and a face that had not slept. Biscuit growled low, and I put a hand on her head and she stopped. Nora was inside doing homework. I did not invite Gail past the gate. She stood on the gravel where she had stood the first day, and she said the words I had been told by people who knew her longer than I did, that she had never once said to anyone. I need your help. I waited. It came out of her in pieces, the way duress always does. The association was looking at fines. The insurance was gone. The families wanted the pool, the one thing she had promised them. And now there was no pool, because the only one in 20 miles was mine, and it was red-tagged because of her, and a red-tagged pool stays closed until a certified operator signs a permit and brings it back into compliance, and there was exactly one certified operator who could do that. And he was standing on the other side of a gate she had chained. Please, she said, take it back, operate it, Open it under your own name, your permit, whatever terms you want. Just, please let there be a pool. I will withdraw the dedication. I will rescind every fine. I will put it in writing tonight. The board will sign anything. Just take it back. She was asking me to take back the thing she had fined me $500 for using. The thing she had chained me out of, the thing she had stood in my driveway and called functionally part of our common area. She wanted me to want it again, on my own land, the way I had wanted it the morning before her first letter came. I'm going to tell you what I said because I did not gloat, and I want you to know it is possible to win without it. I told her I would think about it. I did think about it. I thought about it for a week, while the binder sat on my table and Nora swam in the evenings and the families down the hill, who had done nothing wrong, sweated through a July with no place to put their kids. Those families were not my enemy. They never had been. And a pool that sits behind a red tag helps no one, least of all a 14-year-old girl in another house who wanted what Carol had wanted. So here's what I did, and it is the only part of this where I was anything other than careful. I did not take Gail's offer. I made my own. I had my attorney draw a clean license agreement, recorded, on my terms. The pool would remain mine, deed and ground and all in perpetuity, with my survey attached, so no future board could ever pretend again. I would operate it under my own permit and my own certification, the way I had always intended to. And on 3 afternoons a week for a set fee paid by the association directly to me, the families of Lakeshore Vista, who had been robbed by a developer and lied to by a president, could use my pool, supervised, logged, lawful, and safe. The fines were rescinded in full. The false dedication was withdrawn and a corrective document recorded, with my survey. So the lie was buried under the truth in the public record. And the agreement named the operator of record, in writing, by license number. The operator was me. It was always going to be me. That was the whole thing Gail never understood. You cannot vote a man's competence onto a clipboard. The license is his signature or it is nobody's. Gail signed it. The board signed it. She did not run for president again. Sal tells me the new board is mostly families from the original lots, the kind of people who read the minutes, and that they put a framed copy of my survey on the clubhouse wall next to the banner about community, which I think is the closest thing to a joke Sal has ever made. The pool opened the 2nd week of August. I stood at my own gate, which has no lock on it now, just a latch, and I watched the Lakeshore Vista kids come up the hill with their towels, the same kids who had been turned away in June. And this time, the gate was open because I opened it, under my permit, with my name on the log, the way it should have been from the start. Nora ran the snack window and overcharged the board members on purpose. Biscuit got fed a hot dog by every child who came through. Sal sat in a folding chair in his green coat and inspected nothing and drank a lemonade and looked for once like a man at rest. Gail came once, early, before the families. She stood at the latch and asked if she could come in. I said it was a public use afternoon and everyone was welcome, which was as much grace as I had in me, and she swam 10 quiet laps in the pool. She had tried to steal, and she got out, and she dried off, and she said low that it was a good pool. I said it was. She did not come back, and I did not need her to. The lesson had landed without me saying a word of it. Let me step out of the story for a second and give you the part you actually came for, because the pool is mine, but the lesson belongs to you. If you own a thing, Know the line. Walk your boundary. Pay the surveyor. Pull the permit even when no one makes you. And keep the license current even when you think you will never need it, because the day you need it, you will not have time to go get it. Keep the paper. Keep the certified copy with the raised seal, not the photocopy. A board can vote, a president can shout. A management company can put a lock on your gate before dawn, and none of it changes one line on a recorded plat. The deed is older than the resolution. The survey is heavier than the speech. And competence, the real kind, the kind you earn over 34 years, and keep up out of stubbornness, cannot be transferred by a vote, conscripted by a contract, or stolen with a forged map. That is the whole defense. Be the person they cannot do it without. If a clipboard ever shows up on your gravel and tells you that the thing you built is functionally theirs, do not shout. Smile if you can manage it. Then go check their work, because the loud ones almost never check their own. If this sat right with you, you know what to do with the little buttons under this video. And if you have got a story of your own about a line somebody tried to cross, I would rather read that than almost anything. Next time I will tell you about the man who got a violation notice for the barn his grandfather built, from a board that did not know the easement ran the other way, and what he found in the county vault that ended the whole thing in an afternoon. Until then, keep your copies certified and keep your gate latched but never locked against the kids. Take care of yourselves.